Captain Midnight.
This video is brought to you by CuriosityStream. So with the release of Multiverse of Madness, the MCU continues to roll on, and I'm sure I'll be talking about that next week once I've seen it. But this week, I wanted to do something a little different. I wanted to focus on a character I like a lot, but who seems to have disappeared from the cultural mainstream in a way that I don't really understand. Zorro. Unlike characters like the Phantom or the Shadow, pulp heroes whose function as crime fighters in cities has basically been filled by superheroes, Zorro feels like he could still feel fresh and exciting if he just got the right chance to shine. I feel like he's been a well-liked character for over 100 years now, so I'm left wondering why he's being so ignored recently. So that's what I want to dig into this week. Why Zorro seems to have disappeared from pop culture and why he deserves a comeback now more than ever. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and maybe give it a like too so more people will actually see this video. But with all that table setting out of the way, let's dive into what makes Zorro great and underused in the 21st century.
From the world-famous Walt Disney Studios, the ABC network proudly brings you Zorro.
So the first thing I should address is that technically yes, there is some Zorro stuff in development right now, namely a CW show and another show in a telenovela style. The CW show actually looked like it might come out too, but with the recent Warner Brothers sale and the cancellations at the network lately, who really knows? I'm gonna set those aside for the moment though, because even if that show does ever see the light of day, I'm gonna go on record and say that Zorro deserves better than a 6-episode CW miniseries. There's also a potential upcoming movie that I think barely counts, but I'll talk about that later. Created in 1919 by pulp writer Johnston McCulley, Zorro was a smash hit upon release of his first story, which was quickly turned into a movie starring old Hollywood legend Douglas Fairbanks Sr., and helped popularize the concept of secret identities in pulp entertainment. But I think Zorro deserves to be more than a pulpy footnote today. At his best, he's just a flat-out compelling character. Zorro has appeared in just about any medium you can name: movies, TV, film serials, video games, and of course novels and short stories where he originated. But I feel like there's only a few Zorro projects that your average person would know today. First and foremost are The Mask of Zorro and The Legend of Zorro, the 1998 and 2005 films starring Antonio Banderas. And overall, I have mixed feelings on these adaptations. Banderas is a perfect fit for the role, and GoldenEye director Martin Campbell brings some really good throwback action to the table. On the other hand, Legend is kind of dead on arrival. Don't get me wrong, it's watchable, but it feels pretty dragged down by making the thrust of the plot what if Zorro got married. Not that that's an inherently bad premise, but the movie is one note in the worst way, using tons of stale marriage jokes that feel more at home in a terrible Lockhorns newspaper comic strip than a Zorro movie. Another odd thing about the Banderas movies is that they're kind of legacy sequels before the concept existed. Banderas doesn't actually play Don Diego de la Vega, who is in the movie played by Anthony Hopkins, but a new character who takes up the mantle. I don't have a huge problem with that, and I think it works well in the context of that first movie, and of course Hopkins is dependably good as a mentor figure, but it does mean the actual original character of Zorro hasn't really been the lead of a major studio movie since 1981's Zorro the Gay Blade, a poorly received parody. For a more earnest, theatrical American adaptation, you have to reach back even further, to 1940's Mark of Zorro, a movie so old that in some versions of the Batman canon, it's the film that a young Bruce Wayne and his parents were seeing before Joe Chill ruined their night out. Now, to be fair, there were other worthwhile adaptations after that, like 1975's spaghetti western Zorro, and on TV with Disney's hugely successful but very sanitized 50s Zorro show. With a character as widely known as this one, it just seems so strange that it's been as long as it has since there's been a real attempt at taking the classic Zorro story to modern audiences. I think there's this perception that the character is really tacky and dated. And look, I'll admit that I have a big soft spot for dated old heroes. One look at this channel's name could tell you that. But I don't think that's what Zorro is. Or rather, that's not all he can be. Like Batman, who borrowed a ton from him, Zorro was the son of a very rich man who now fights violence and corruption. And he has a secret identity as a slightly bumbling and clueless rich guy. But I think what's different about this character is just how much focus is put on Zorro as a defender of the downtrodden and the poor against an oppressive and tyrannical regime. Many versions of the character, like the 50s Disney take, kind of downplay this element of him, but it is the beating heart of Zorro, and in my opinion, makes him very ripe for rediscovery. While the details and the exact time period are often shifted around, there's one simple core to the character that I think will always resonate with audiences. Wherever the powerful and cruel are taking advantage of those without the means to fight back, Zorro will be there, righting wrongs with style and flair. And while I'm not asking someone to make an ultra dark and gritty Zorro film, I would love to see a new movie that takes the character and his mission a little more seriously, that delivers exciting, inventive action filmmaking without constantly winking at the audience and treating him as a retro joke. And technically, any studio or even individual should be able to create new Zorro stories. His original adventure is in the public domain. But thanks to things like the Disney series, among many others, there's a lot of companies out there that claim to own the character, even if they really only own one particular take on him. That kind of thing gets tricky very quickly, and is probably one of the barriers to getting a new movie made. That doesn't mean that there's no new Zorro stuff out there though. Matt Wagner illustrated a well-received comic version that even crossed over with Quentin Tarantino's Django Unchained in an official Django sequel comic that's well worth checking out. These comics, along with some of the more recent novels, I think form the blueprints of what could make a really fantastic big screen return for the character. I know Tarantino famously only wants to do like one more movie, but if there's some way he could bring back both Django and Zorro to our screens, I'd be pretty thrilled with that, because I still think there's a ton of potential left in that pairing. There's also the possibility of one last Antonio Banderas movie. The actor showed up for a small part in Uncharted recently, and while he was pretty wasted in that role, it reminded me of just how much I'd like to see him back in action movies again. A movie about an aging Zorro who uses his wits and experience to make up for losing some speed and agility would make for a really fun story. And I think that first movie is strong enough to deserve a more fitting farewell than what the 2005 film gave him. Late last year, details about a new film titled Zorro 2.0 emerged, which will apparently follow a new Zorro, who's a hacker who goes by the screen name Z0RR0 and fights back against a secret government unit who attacked his mother. And look, I want to give this the benefit of the doubt, but that does not sound very promising to me. And it also bears very, very little resemblance to the actual character, to the point where it barely seems like an adaptation beyond just using the name. Zorro is a character who entertained audiences for decades in novels, pulp magazines, big budget productions, film serials, television. He may no longer have that beloved reputation of Batman, but I really do think the themes and concepts of the character would still hold up well today. I mean, even at the most basic level, who doesn't enjoy a well-choreographed sword fight? In the end, I wanted to make this video for one really simple reason. I love Zorro. I think he's a cool character, I think he inhabits an interesting setting and story, and I like his swashbuckling, clever fighting style. If Morbius the Living Vampire can garner an $80 million movie, I'd like to think that Zorro can too, and hopefully a far better movie at that.
Zorro is watching them, they can't escape from him. Zorro will bring them to shame. Out in old California, Zorro.
But I really want to know what you think, because to be honest, I kind of made this video as a way to gauge interest. Do you have any interest in a Zorro movie? And if so, who would you like to see cast? Oh, and I would like to mention that you can watch this video along with all my other ones, and some exclusive ones, ad-free on my streaming video platform, Nebula, alongside creators like Patrick H. Willems, H. Bomber Guy, CinemaWins, and so many more. What I love about Nebula is that it's creator driven first. Like in my recent Netflix video, I had to go back in the YouTube version and just blur a ton of stuff, and that's just not something that's going to happen on Nebula. Things like the algorithm, ads, and bots on this site just aren't a thing there. Plus it's bundled in with an amazing documentary streaming service, Curiosity Stream. This week, I really recommend watching Eternal Egypt, a great miniseries that dives into the history of ancient Egypt. And that's just the tip of the iceberg thanks to their docs on nature, science, tech, and more. Literally thousands of documentaries. So sign up to Curiosity Stream and get that email that welcomes you to Nebula as well. getting both services for just $14.79 for an entire year. Sign up now by going to curiositystream.com/captainmidnight. That's curiositystream.com/captainmidnight.
Here's a special tip for the fellas and girls who have not already joined Captain Midnight's new 1940 Flight Patrol. You'd better hurry up and join at once because there's a big adventure ahead. The thing to do now is to get started because we're going to have not only barrels of fun, but loads of free gifts and prizes too.